Appalachian Trail in the United States is one of the world's most famous hiking trails, spanning more than 2,000 miles and crossing 14 states. Geologists discovered it was once part of an ancient mountain range stretching all the way from America to Europe. And so in recent years, new chapters of the International Trail were created, including our very own one here in Ulster. I'm Lolly Spence, a tour guide and Ulster-Scots historian.
And I'm Mark Thompson, born and bred in the Ards. In this series, we'll be exploring the 300-mile route across 4 counties, passing through some of the most picturesque locations in Ulster. For centuries, thousands of people left these shores to travel to the wild landscapes of the American Appalachians. They became known as the Scotch-Irish.
The people we meet in this journey will help us explore our enduring links with the Appalachian region, as well as our own Ulster-Scots language and heritage. Join us as we go Walkin Hame.
We're in for a bit of an adventure.
Okay.
I love Appalachia. I've been 3 times. The first time was 25 years ago on honeymoon. Youthful and fresh-faced.
Oh, look at you.
But the landscapes, when you get up into those mountains and when you travel through them, you get this real sense not only of the most beautiful landscapes and vistas.
Looks amazing.
But the connection with the people and the culture and the heritage, and you drive through towns that are named after towns here as well. It is just one of the most fascinating and wonderful places.
It's kind of like Ireland stretched on a much bigger scale, isn't it?
Yeah, when you're standing up on the crest of some of those ridges and you just see another mountain range and another one and another one, and the haziness, you can see why they're called Blue Ridge Mountains and Smoky Mountains. But of course, a while ago, the geologists who looked after the Appalachian Trail realized that in ancient times, before the Atlantic Ocean was formed and before the continents all separated, that we were connected and that the geology, the mountains that formed in Appalachia, also continued into Canada, across the Atlantic Ocean, into the north of Ireland, into Scotland, and then on over into Scandinavia. So we can actually do a bit of it here now.
So it's a hiking route that brings us from the mountains of America right across the Atlantic.
Yeah. Now, fortunately, it's not as long as the American one. It's 2,200 miles and starts in Georgia, ends in Maine. Ours is about 280 miles.
So the route then, we're going to begin here at Larne and make our way up through the beautiful Antrim hills and the coastal road, coming round and down, dropping into the Sperrins, and away out west then through the Blue Stacks and finishing up about Donegal.
That's right. And with all of your tour guiding expertise, Lolly, you must know loads of these places already.
I definitely know parts of them for sure, and I have walked quite a lot of these hills myself, but this new route is going to take us down some wonderful new trails.
Yeah. Well, have you got your walking boots with you?
I surely do, and my rucksack and my coffee.
The first stop on our journey is the port town of Larne on the east coast of County Antrim. For centuries, this has been an important harbour for people arriving from Scotland. But from the 18th century onward, it became one of the main departure points for the hundreds of thousands of Ulster-Scots migrants who made the often perilous journey to America. We have come to meet Dr. Lindy Lunny, an expert on the Ulster diaspora in the United States, who spent years researching the lives of the men and women who settled in the Appalachian region.
Well, Lindy, we've just got going on the International Appalachian Trail. Your life in so many ways is transatlantic, specifically connecting Antrim and Appalachia.
Well, that's right, and it goes back a long way in my lifetime because when I was at school, I got a scholarship to go and live with a family in rural East Tennessee, which is part of the Appalachian Mountains. And of course, I didn't know at the time how linked Appalachia and County Antrim and the whole of the north of Ireland would have been until I got to school. My class was full of names from County Antrim. There was Kerr and McKinney and read, and names just that you would have met any day in County Antrim. And people, I think, related to each other the way that we did at home. And certainly I fitted in no bother.
Did you find that the people in Appalachia still had that connection to home, that they knew of their Scots-Irish origins?
Yes and no. The people who had the names like McKinney and Kerr, if I said to them, where were your ancestors from, they would have said Pennsylvania. And a lot of them had lost the connection back across the Atlantic. And Pennsylvania was where their time in America as a family, as a historical group, had come from. They came down from West Pennsylvania, down the Great Wagon Road, and that was what their story of origin was. And I told a lot of people, you're not actually from Pennsylvania, your folk are from a lot further away. They're from over the other side of the Atlantic. And that was news to quite a few of them. I think a lot of people just assumed they'd always been American.
When you arrived in East Tennessee, were you aware of the Appalachian Trail and did you walk any stretches of it?
Yes, I was aware of the Appalachian geology and the fact that people were walking on this through trail. They talked about hiking through, and people that I knew did do that. Certainly, we did go and visit the Appalachian Mountains, and I went to a place called Cades Cove, which is full of the pioneer cabins. It was very, very reminiscent of home. But I didn't know that one day I would be standing here on the Appalachian Trail, and here it is in County Antrim. That's a big development in my lifetime.
Well, we're here at the shore in Larne, which became a very important emigration port.
Its history goes a long way back. You know, the Vikings. It's a haven, but it's also a departure point. I mean, it must have been a really distressing experience to sail out of Larne Loch and head out into the Atlantic and not know whether you would see loved ones again. So to me, Larne is a place where people look forward and backwards. And the Appalachian Trail does that as well. If you look at their sign, it's kind of going both ways. You can go both ways on it. So I think Larne is a good place to start this discovery.
There were really a great number of different reasons why people would have emigrated from Ulster to America over the centuries.
There were. I think there's as many reasons as there were people who left. And not all of them left in poverty and despair. They went with their Bible and parts of their loom and their knowledge. They weren't running away from Ireland. The promise of free land took a lot of people away. They were leaving Ireland with hope. And that's a different kind of emigration. And our ancestors did not know when they left Larne and went to Appalachia that they were walking on the same rocks. The history is underneath us all, under the Atlantic. And I think that's amazing. It's just like the DNA that keeps us all connected together.
Just a mile from the promenade, at the head of Larne Loch, sits Dramalis House, one of the town's finest buildings. Since 1930, it's been used as a residential retreat run by the Sisters of the Cross and Passion.
This beautiful house was built in the 19th century as the family home of the great Presbyterian industrialist and philanthropist, Sir Hugh Smiley. But for me, this place also has a very personal connection.
And I've brought you to my old family home. I would love to tell you that this is actually where my great-grandparents owned, but they were the servants. Back in the early 1900s, my great-grandfather was the chauffeur to the Smileys who owned this house, and my great-granny was the housekeeper. My own granny and her brothers and sisters grew up here, playing in the grounds of this gorgeous estate, and I have so many happy memories myself of this place.
So where did your great-grandparents come from?
Well, they came from Scotland, like the Smileys as well. They came across from a place called Paisley, just on the outskirts of Glasgow. And whenever Sir Hugh Houston Smiley built this house, he actually had the land, but it was his wife's money that paid for the building of the house. She was Elizabeth Kerr, and her family were also from Paisley. They were part of the big Clark, Coates and Kerr thread dynasty. So it was her money, but his vision, you would say. You find lots of references to their home in Scotland inside the house.
It really is beautiful and impressive.
Would you like to see inside it?
Very much so.
Come on, I'll give you a wee tour. So Mark, wait till you see this beautiful little reception room. I want to show you the stained glass window, first of all, because I know that you're going to really appreciate the significance. So up here on the left, we've got a representation of England and a quotation from Shakespeare. Naught shall make us rue if England to itself do rest but true. And then in the next window, we've got harps and lions leading us through to Scotland. Robbie Burns, wherever I wander, wherever I rove, the sweet hills of the Highlands, wherever I love. And then Ireland. This is Thomas Moore. Erin, O Erin, though long in the shade, thy star will shine out when the proudest shall fade.
And it's a great example of that classic cultural understanding of Ulster as a place that isn't just geographically Irish, but is culturally also Scottish and English, with the three combined.
The rose, the shamrock, and the thistle.
Beautiful.
Come on, to show you some more stuff.
Look at this here. Oh, wow. It's Art Nouveau, Charles Rennie Mackintosh inspired almost. Depiction of the Red Hand of Ulster.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Come on, till I show you what's through here. Well, now look at this.
Wow.
This is us in the tower now of Dramalis, looking out over Larne Loch. You can almost imagine Viking longboats coming up there in centuries gone by.
This is some view. Look at the landscape. It's incredible.
Breathtaking views in all directions.
After leaving Larne, we follow the trail along the famous Antrim Coast Road. When we eventually reach the crossroads of the village of Cairncastle, there's reassurance that we're on the right track.
And here's our first official sign.
Yep, the International Appalachian Trail.
Yep, Ulster, Ireland.
And this is where we are now. Look at Cairncastle, the cairn of the castle, named after a wee ruin of a castle down at Ballygally there. And we have a long journey to make yet. Well now, Mark, I am going to stay in Cairncastle for a wee while and head inland to the Sallagh Braes.
Okay, well, I'm for Glenarm, so we'll see you further on the trail.
See you a wee bit later.
Someone who knows all about the village of Cairncastle and the glens that surround it is local man and tour guide Robert Stewart. Like my mum's family, the Muirheads, Robert's ancestors have lived in the village for generations.
So this is a really beautiful place here, a lovely location just at the foot of the Sallagh Braes and Scat there on the horizon.
It has a lovely view out across the sea as well, out across towards Scotland.
So I guess there's a chance we might wind up here one day ourselves.
There's quite a possibility. I hope not too soon, but...
Well, this is where I would be. These are the Muirheads. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 generations of us all buried in here.
Very similar with my own mother's family here, the Mortons here, buried in the graves here. Again, we can trace them back to about the mid-1700s. So it's nice to be able to do that in your local area, isn't it?
It is.
And my father's family are further on down.
And there's a lot of Scottish surnames in this graveyard, aren't there?
Oh, there is a lot of Scottish surnames, yeah. And my own Stewart to start with.
Robert, we can't leave the graveyard without mentioning what used to be a magnificent Spanish chestnut tree in this site. It fell down there now the year before last, but it's a fabulous story why we had a Spanish chestnut tree here in Cairncastle.
Yes, well, tradition has it that there was a sailor washed up on the beach down here possibly from the Armada, and Spanish sailors would have carried, as a lot of sailors would have carried a chestnut in their pocket to ward off scurvy. And whenever the man was buried here in the graveyard, obviously the chestnut tree sprouted up from that.
500 years of history in one trunk there.
In one trunk.
Above Cairncastle, our route passes by a series of spectacular hills and braes. The most famous of these is the Sallagh Braes, a section of basalt cliffs that create a natural amphitheatre in the heart of the Glens.
Well, this really was worth the hike up the hill, wasn't it?
It was indeed.
This is truly panoramic.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Beautiful view of the Sallagh Braes and the scenery beyond.
This majestic landscape has earned celebrity status in recent years as it's been used as a backdrop for major TV series and movies like Game of Thrones and The Northman.
Like there's the Mournes in County Down, and then sweeping right round, past the Isle of Man on the horizon, and then the Rins of Galloway and the mountains of Scotland. What a view.
It really is.
And then these are the Sallagh Braes.
These are the Sallagh Braes, yeah. That's an escarpment that we're looking down on the top of here. That's the best vantage point to see them from.
And how was this formed? It's a very unusual, kind of dramatic cliff.
Oh, the geologists would tell us that this was formed after the last ice age. What happened was that the underlying rocks, mudstone, which are quite slippery, the overlying rocks of limestone and basalt actually slipped a bit in those and caused landslides. And with the ice retreating and the pressure going off the rocks, they started to slip down into the valley, causing these landslides, which are still visible right around here. Some people actually think that it was caused by a meteor, but there's no evidence of that. But it does look like the circular part of a valley like that.
It does. Robert, your knowledge of this area is vast, and you bring people here and show them this and share this history.
Yes, it's a lovely area to bring people to, especially on a day like this. We love to get them up here. We have various walks right down the Antrim coast.
While Lolly has been in the Sallagh Braes, I'm picking up the trail as it heads back down toward the Antrim coast and the ancient village of Glenarm, which can trace its history all the way back to the 12th century.
I get weary like a shore-bound sailor when the world throws me cold against the wire.
Glenarm Castle is today home to the Dalriada Music Festival, and the village and surrounding glen have been producing renowned musicians and artists for generations. Among them is acclaimed singer-songwriter Ben Glover. He now lives in Nashville, Tennessee, but I'm catching up with him on a visit back to his hometown.
The loneliness of the immigrant is like nothing else I've ever felt. To be cut loose from all you knew.
Ben, Glenarm has a lot of musical heritage. How did you get into music?
I started playing the guitar when I was 13 because my brother Mark and my father played guitar, so there was always one in the house, and you know, they taught me chords, and I started writing songs as soon as I started playing guitar. And then when I was about, I think I was 14, I was brought to my very first session in this pub, in this booth, believe it or not.
Of the immigrant. Oh, that's the curse of the immigrant.
And that selection of music that you heard first, were they local tunes or were they from Scotland? Were they from America?
It was a bit of a melting pot. Local songs like Green Glens of Antrim, I remember singing a lot around here when I was young. And the local area and the Scots influence too probably had more of an influence than what I even know. And I was massive into Bob Dylan when I was in my teens. So I would have sung a lot of old Dylan songs at those sessions. But the interesting thing is Dylan was taking those melodies from old Scottish hymns and ballads from like the 16th, 17th century. So when you think of it like that, there's a nice kind of connection. Even though I might be singing a Dylan lyric, it was embedded in this old, probably Ulster-Scots melody.
Well, when did America have a personal draw for you to want to emigrate?
You know, I think even growing up here in Glenarm, part of me was always maybe dreaming of being in America. And I went over and just fell in love with Nashville. All this music blaring, coming at you. It's like nothing else I'd ever experienced. I thought that there would be more opportunities for my music and for songwriting. Going into a bigger pond, really, it was going to make me a better musician, a better artist. And it definitely did. But what I did notice is this sense of melody that we have, that we bring with us. People here in Northern Ireland take a lot of things for granted. One of them is our ability to write an amazing melody. and an amazing tune. Because you grow up singing all those old ballads. The lyrics and the stories are one thing, but we carry a sense of melody from this part of the world that nowhere else has.
Well, Nashville is Music City. It's a great creative hub and urban centre. But do you like to get away from it up into the Appalachian Mountains?
Yeah, I have done that quite a few times, just to get out of the city. Because coming from Glenarm, you're very used to space and openness, especially, you know, I brought up there on the shore front. So you get up in the morning, you look at the sea, you actually look across to the Mull of Kintyre. That was my first thing I saw every morning. So growing up here and the environment here has a big influence, and I make a point of going to tap into that when I can.
And you've written so movingly about the emigrant experience and your own emigration experience. And there's that wonderful line in one of your songs where you write of where the hills fall upon the coast. My heart wanders there the most.
That's right. That's probably one of the most truthful lines I've written. And when I sing those lines, it just brings me right back home.
It's in my bones, it's in my blood. This dream of home as it never was, where the hills fall upon the coast. My heart wanders there the most.
This picturesque stretch of coastline hasn't just inspired musicians, but local poets too. Just around the headland from Glenarm, where the International Appalachian Trail continues, is the small fishing village of Carnlough. It's also home to one of the new generation of poets to emerge from this part of the world. Gary Morgan is from a Catholic background, and his poem recollecting his childhood experiences of the Confession helped him land a runner-up spot in the inaugural Linen Hall Library Ulster-Scots writing competition.
Bless me feather for a' he send, I stole some scran for the biscuit tin. I tried to take me ma for a fool when I says I was ill and wouldn't go to school. Sunday last, I missed out in chapel to raid an orchard for sure crab apples. I went down to the harbour and jumped in the boats, and I nicked 50p from my old boy's coat. Now Feather John, he says to me, say 12 feathers and a glory be, and 5 Hail Marys for skipping class, but most of all for no going to mass. So I went out of the box and I sat with the rest. He were waiting to see Feather John and be blessed. I says all my prayers and donnered on Hame, where I told me ma I'd ne'er sin again.
Gary's keen to show that the world of Ulster-Scots is open to everyone.
Well, if you understand the confession, it's about the sacraments in a Catholic church. My perception of Ulster-Scots was more of a Presbyterian thing, rightly or wrongly. And, you know, I don't mean to offend anybody by that, you know, it's just a perception I had.
Well, I think you're right, because it's the big dominant theme that so many folk talk about.
Yeah.
But it does leave out a whole range of other folk who aren't Presbyterian, but who have an Ulster-Scots aspect to their life.
Yeah. You know, Fergus Moore led a tribe called the Scotai. They were a Gaelic tribe left here maybe 1600 years ago to go to Scotland. And they settled there and ended up establishing the Kingdom of Dalriada, which stretches from Glenarm right up to as far as Bushmills, I think, and into Argyll in Scotland. And when you think of that, if people were going back and forth before there was any there was only maybe one established church or religion, we're probably all descended from the same people anyway. But if you take an interest in a language or words or culture, we just need to open our minds a wee bit more, explore things. And
it's mainly community rather than nationality. That seems to be the thing.
Yeah.
How did you start to realise that these things were important?
Well, to be truthful, if you're talking about Ulster-Scots, I never knew what it was. I've said, to be fair, in the Glens of Antrim, there's probably more of an Irish influence with a lot of folk. But my dad would have but in a wee amateur dramatic society. We would tell the grandmains that he was an actor in his day, but other boys would say, couldn't act in Egypt. But he would have done a few plays by George Shields. He actually lived just about a mile out the bay there. Professor Tim and the insurance man, and when you were hearing them, it was all people from the same background, from Carnlough and Glenarm, and they would have all got together and they were talking, but we would have just put down as a culture brogue or a country brogue, speaking as broad as they could and using phrases that they knew. Nobody taught them these phrases. They learnt them from their youth. I'm looking back on that, you think, that's actually Ulster-Scots, you know. There'll be some guys here say, that's no a language, that's, you know, it's only slang, it's only this and that. Couldn't care less whether you call it a language or a dialect or whatever. It's words we all know.
That belong to your heart and to your folk and to your community.
Let's embrace it. And it's fun, it's interesting. There's great history, there's great storytelling, you know, and great crack. And the people I've met through it have all been very, very welcoming. So people from any background can embrace it. There's a lot of talent here. There's a lot of writing talent. There's a lot of artists here. You know, all the scenery. It's all part of this land. I suppose writing's an art form too. I would never have put myself down as a writer, but I'm happy to say I'm a writer now.
So am I.
Thank you.
From Carnlough, the trail heads north through the village of Waterfoot. From here, we continue inland to the Queen of the Glens, Glen Arif.
The light here at this time of year is fantastic.
40 shades of green.
Where else would you rather be?
Nowhere, the beautiful Glens of Antrim.
What did Johnny Cash say? I'd walk from Cork to Larne to see the 40 shades of green. We're not quite going that far, but
I know.
But we started in Larne.
Eventually, we catch our breath on the hills of Glenanne to drink in the spectacular scenery.
It's quite a view.
It's just stunning. What a beautiful afternoon.
That's the Mull of Kintyre through the glen.
Clear as a bell there, just up the valley. With no mist strolling in from the sea today.
You know, I will try to sing the praises of County Down as much as I can, but you have to admit, this is special.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate really in that Daddy's family are from County Down, but Mummy's family are from here, so I have a foot in both counties. It all feels like home to me.
Well, we have plenty more miles to go, more things to see.
Let's hope it's all as beautiful as this.
In the next episode, we'll be continuing our Appalachian adventure as we visit the dramatic ruins of Kinbean Castle and explore the myths and legends surrounding the Sea of Moyle.
In Coleraine, we crossed the mighty River Bann before hiking through the rugged surroundings of the Sperrin Mountains.